Greetings all, Ferrari 601 here. Of course, we are now in the final hours before the 2018 Italian Grand Prix here at Monza. I figured let's take a little bit of a closer look at this absolutely fantastic circuit. L'Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, as it is known in its native Italian, it is among the oldest dedicated racing facilities in the world, built all the way back in 1922 now. Originally, this circuit featured a very fast high-speed ring, an oval section as we would now call it, some of which is still visible here as we are flying down the start-finish straight, but an absolutely tremendous facility this place is. It's also colloquially known as La Pista Magica, the magic track. And magical it certainly is. It is the fastest circuit on the Formula One calendar. Average lap speeds in excess of 270 kilometers per hour down this start-finish straight here with the 2018 Formula One cars. We will be exceeding 340, maybe even 350 kilometers an hour coming down here into the braking zone for the first chicane. Absolutely tremendous facility, and as we go along here, you can start to see the root of the old banking as it snakes its way through now some quite overgrown trees here at Monza, but an absolutely incredible place. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at it. Of course, to take us around here, we could do it in a Formula One car, but things would pass by just far too quickly for us to take any close looks at them, so I have hired a quintessentially Italian, quintessentially quirky Italian car for all of us. Yes, the 2017 Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. Yep, here it is. It's a four-door sedan, but 500 horsepower, and it loves to go sideways. So let's just take a little bit of a closer look at somewhat reduced speeds here relative to Formula One race pace, but let's take a look at what's going on here around Monza. We'll stop at some of the landmarks here and talk about what the Formula One drivers have to be thinking about as they are on a qualifying lap around this place. We'll drive out into the pit lane here, and we'll get onto the track. Pit exit onto start finish, as you might expect. That is the case for most circuits in Formula One. The Formula One cars, they'll be approaching the first chicane here, still flat out in 8th gear, doing about 350 kilometers per hour. They'll be braking at about the 120 meter point before turn 1, Variante Retifiglio. It is a very simple, classic chicane, right and left. You see the curbing there on the inside of both apices. They will be riding that curbing pretty severely as they're going along, particularly on qualifying laps, and then of course the exit curbing there pretty flat. They will be running over that as well, but it's not necessarily the fastest way around here. In a Formula One car, accelerating up into 7th and 8th gear here for the first proper corner of the lap, Curva Grande. This will be taken flat out in 8th gear. The speeds will be building up to 330, 340 here on the exit before they start braking for the second chicane, Variante della Roggia. Here it is. Braking down from 8th gear to 3rd or 2nd gear, it is a left-right chicane, and it is also a lot shallower and therefore a lot faster than the first chicane. Here, take it in 2nd or 3rd gear again. Exit curbs there on the left where we saw Lewis Hamilton having some fun with the gravel there in practice. Coming up now into the Lesmo complex. These are two right-hand corners taken in 4th or 5th gear in a 2018 Formula One car, and here is where a lot of the fun of the lap can start. You can see that there is a lot of curbing both on the entrance and the exit of these corners, and for 2018 some more serrated curbing has been added here where you see the concrete there in green, but definitely a place where you can gain or lose a lot of time. Coming down now, this left-hand kink, or it's called Serraglio, as we come downhill, the only real elevation change of this lap underneath the old banking there. It's basically a bridge that the old banking follows, and now coming into the third chicane of the lap, Variante Ascari, of course named for Alberto Ascari, the last Formula One world champion from Italy. Simple left, right, left, exit curbs there, and then a little slip road off onto the right-hand side. That is legal in qualifying. Coming down to the penultimate straight now, they'll be back up into 8th gear around 320, 330 clicks as they brake now into the final turn of the lap, the iconic Curva Parabolica, the Parabolic Curve as its name suggests. Lots of runoff here nowadays, however, used to be gravel traps, but there are still some gravel traps there beyond the asphalt run out. Curbing there on the left, you won't really see the drivers using that too much as it will scrub off some inertia, as of course they're considering top speed coming down the start-finish straight, which once again will bring them back up to 8th gear and VMAX. Braking for the first chicane. They will be very late on turn in here because they need to clip that first apex curb pretty harshly if they want to get the car around the corner in any respectable time. And of course, as we mentioned before, those exit curbs there, they're probably going to want to stay away from them because they will just act as a brake. If not, holding a little bit of water if it does happen to rain anymore this weekend could definitely upset the balance of the rear tires. They're trying to get the traction down. Second chicane, they will brake right about here at the 100-meter board from 8th gear down into 3rd or 2nd for the second chicane. Of course, us in a road car, we have to be a little bit more judicious than that. We just don't have that level of performance, but still pretty quick, and definitely that second chicane is pretty daunting no matter what you're driving. Into the Lesmo corners, they're not identical. Have a look at what we were doing there just through the first one, and now the second one. It is a lot tighter, but it's also a much shorter corner. It's a tighter radius, but we're already out of the corner. The first Lesmo, it tends to go on forever, particularly if you are really in the zone on a fast lap. Definitely those Lesmo corners, they are not twins, even though they share a name. Definitely very critical for a fast lap around this place. Ascari, they'll be braking right about here, the 100-meter board once again, throwing the car into the left, gathering it back up to the right, and then one final time to the left. They'll just cheat over those apex curbs in the final element of the chicane, and then they will use all of the runoff here on the right-hand side. Again, that is legal and fair play. If anyone happens to make an overtake doing that, though, I do think we would see a steward's inquiry. Back down to Parabolic again. They'll brake here, right where that green patch of concrete was, on the approach there on the left-hand side, and then of course they will stay on the circuit unless your name is Sebastian Vettel here in the free practice session. Pit entrance is right there off to the right. Limiter line comes up on you pretty quick. Definitely don't want any pit lane speeding violations. And then the DRS activation zone, we just passed it. That extends all the way down into, believe it or not, past the fast lap brake markers, which are about here on a fast lap. The DRS zone does not terminate until right about here at the 50-meter board, there or thereabouts. So if you do want to be the last of the late brakers, you still do have some DRS assistance, basically all the way down into turn 1. Of course, we saw Marcus Ericsson have a huge accident there in free practice 2. Thankfully, he was okay. Seems like it was a DRS problem there. The DRS stuck open after he got onto the brake pedal, but nonetheless, he's fine, and it was pretty spectacular. Undoubtedly, we'll see that in some end-of-year highlight content from Formula 1. In terms of car setup, what do you need around this place in a Formula 1 car? Well, as you can imagine, we have long straights, we have tight chicanes, and we have some medium to high-speed corners comprising this lap. So downforce is not that important around here. Basically, only through the Lesmos, the complex that we just went through, is where downforce really comes into the equation. Therefore, you will see the Formula 1 cars trimmed out tremendously, particularly from qualifying onward, apart from main conditions, of course. You'll see the teams running very little rear wing. Of course, they have DRS these days, which helps them a little bit. They can afford to run a little bit more rear wing than they could perhaps in days gone by, simply because they will have that DRS advantage. They'll open the slot gap and cut down some drag, but not a lot of wing on the cars. You'll also see the front wing angle turned down quite a bit. You'll see a relatively flat profile across most of the front and rear wings on the Formula 1 cars at Monza. The idea behind this, of course, downforce is not nearly as important, and of course, with downforce comes drag. Therefore, if you want straight line speed, you want to trim the wings out as much as you reasonably can. You still, of course, want to retain cornering performance because it's not like this is a drag race. There are plenty of proper corners around here, but this run down to turn 1 between Parabolica and the first chicane, this is definitely straight line speed territory. Again, straight line speed in the speed trap exceeding 350 kilometers an hour. Through here, this is where Ericsson had his off. notice if you do happen to miss the first chicane, you do have quite a bit of runoff here. This is actually a piece of the circuit which has withstood the test of time. The first chicane has gone through a few different iterations over the years, and initially it wasn't even there at all. This was the original route of the circuit, just bypassing what is now the first chicane and then coming up through Curva Grande as we see here. This has always been a part of the circuit here at Monza. Of course, in the old days, this corner was by no means flat out. Remember, 1950s, 1960s, before the cars had any aero to speak of, certainly no downforce, they would have had to feather the throttle all the way through there, still doing 160 miles an hour, but nowadays, of course, easily flat for a modern Formula One car. Second chicane, also a more recent addition to the circuit. I believe it came into effect in the 1970s, the early 1970s, right around the same time that we lost the banking on the Grand Prix layout, but that really hasn't changed over the years. The first chicane by far has gone through the most significant changes over the history of this circuit. Lesmo corners, not entirely unchanged from the original configuration here. Namely, the second Lesmo has been reprofiled significantly. It used to be a longer corner with a bit of a shallower radius, but now it has been shortened up and tightened up a little bit with some more exit curves added. Just, again, for the sake of sanity. The Ascari chicane used to be just a gradual left-hand bend. Now it is a chicane, but more or less we are following the original route of the circuit through the entrance and the exit there, as you can see. Of course, the run between Ascari and Parabolica, this is also part of the original circuit. No changes here. Track is still the same width as it always was, and it is the same length, more or less, approaching Parabolica here. Again, the Formula 1 cars will brake right about here at the edge of that green concrete patch. Absolutely ridiculous to consider. Of course, the car that we've got here, the Giulia, it is pretty quick, considering that it does have 4 doors and 4 seats. 250, 260, just punching up 6th gear there before we'd better jump on the brakes. Performance not too bad, I must say, considering what it is. And then, of course, you can get the tail out if you so desire. 6-speed manual box in this version. This is the Euro spec, of course. US spec only has the ZF 8-speed dual clutch automatic, but still very quick little car considering you can basically do your shopping in it. Fantastic little thing here. Twin turbo V6 engine designed by Ferrari. Yeah. Speaking of Ferrari, of course, the Italian Grand Prix. This is home soil for Ferrari. We will not accept anything other than a Ferrari victory this weekend. Of course, qualifying, at the time of this recording, we've yet to see qualifying. Hopefully, Vettel and Raikkonen can lock out the front row in some order. I'd love it if we could get Kimi on pole. It could have happened last weekend in Belgium. Ferrari, of course, they do have an absolutely unparalleled way of messing things up. Hopefully they've gotten that out of their system, because I would love to see Kimi or Sebastian, quite honestly, on pole here at Monza. And then, of course, I'd love to see them both romp off into the distance and score a much-needed 1-2 finish. That would definitely bring the Constructors' Championship back to life relative to Mercedes. And, of course, we do need Sebastian Vettel to be winning more races now as we move into the second half of the season. We want that Drivers' Championship back to Maranello. It's been a very long time. Kimi Raikkonen, obviously the last Ferrari world champion, and Ferrari have not won the Drivers' Championship since 2007, nor the Constructors' Championship since 2008. So definitely it is time to bring that fight back to Maranello, and what better a place than right here on home soil in Italy. You see what I mean about this Alpha, though? It loves to go sideways. No, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but again, remember, it's got 4 doors and 4 seats. It's pretty ridiculous considering the package that we have. Do one more lap at some reasonable pace just to have a little bit of fun. Revving the engine past red line there on the downshift. Oh well. It loves to get sideways, what can I say? It's a 4-door sedan that gets sideways. But then again, we're not necessarily talking about the car here. Curva Grande, we'd already be well in excess of 300 kph in a Formula 1 car. And of course, depending on what the lighting conditions are like during qualifying or the race, you can see how close the trees are to the circuit. That is going to wreak havoc with the driver's eyes in terms of casting shadows over apices or into braking zones in particular. So let's hope for a bright, sunshiny day, and let's hope that for qualifying anyway in the early afternoon, let's hope that the sun remains more or less virtually overhead, thus preventing most of those shadows from forming, because it'd be pretty easy to get disoriented around here in those shadows, particularly at those high speeds. Again, because of the speeds that they're running here, they have to be so precise with when they're getting on the brakes. If they miss their braking point, as Nico Hülkenberg showed us at Spa last week, things can go pear-shaped pretty quickly, but on a qualifying lap in particular, even if you're just early by 10 meters, you're going to be losing time relative to the theoretical ultimate pace. So certainly, they want to be precise, they want to be accurate, and the lighting conditions definitely will be helping them or hurting them in that endeavor. Braking for Parabolica, about 50 meters shy of the Formula 1 braking point. Of course, we're not doing Formula 1 speed, so we could get away with it. And now the pit entrance, of course, flat out all the way up to about here, where they will start braking down from whatever incredible speed they manage to attain down to the pit lane speed limit. It's like trying to thread a needle. It's really difficult to see as you're coming out of Parabolica, but that is how you enter the pits here at Monza. And of course now back into the pit lane, stopping just short of our box. Definitely an absolutely fantastic place for a motor race, and thankfully we now know that the Italian Grand Prix is safe for at least another year. In the last couple of weeks leading up to the Italian Grand Prix over the summer break, we were somewhat concerned about the potential fate of this circuit on the calendar, because ticket prices have been going up, ticket sales have been going down, and the future of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza has been in some doubt recently, as it seems always to be every time we come here. But the FIA have published the provisional calendar for the 2019 World Championship, and Monza once again is hosting the Italian Grand Prix, so certainly that is very good to see. At least another year here at Monza. Then again, if you go back and watch old races, even going back to the 1988 race, if you watch the BBC coverage, you'll see that even there they were talking about the potential fate of the Italian Grand Prix. So new story, old story, who knows? But all I know is that we are here at Monza once again, and it is absolutely a fantastic venue. Again, it is the magic track. It is the fastest track in Formula 1. And I, for one, can't wait to see the 2018 Formula 1 drivers going flat out here in qualifying, coming down this straight. Again, 350 clicks down into the braking zone for the first chicane. It's mental. You'll never see a Formula 1 car go quite as fast as they do here at Monza, not only in straight line speed, but in terms of average lap time as well. Absolutely nuts. Of course, Juan Pablo Montoya, he still holds the all-out lap record around here from 2004 in the Williams BMW, 119 and change, maximum speed around 370 kilometers an hour. Absolutely nuts with the 3-liter V10 engine, but these cars, at least in terms of straight line speed, not terribly far off from those glory days of the V10 era. But anyway, I just thought you might enjoy a little bit of a closer look here at l'Autodromo Nazionale di Monza here for the Italian Grand Prix. I will leave you with a couple of hot laps there in the Giulia Quadrifoglio, so perhaps you can enjoy them and maybe learn a little bit more about this track's layout. Until next time, stay tuned for the hot laps. Thank you very much for watching. Ferrari Man 601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.